Building a better Bay Area. Moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC7. Every day we talk with experts about issues important to the Bay Area and get answers for you in real time. Today, we're following the very latest developments out of Britain, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. The monarch who reigned for 70 years died this morning at the age of 96. Tributes are pouring in as the world honors her life and legacy. But first, it's another day of the Bay Area's extreme heat wave, day 9 of a flex alert, the call to conserve energy. Today's flex alert period is even longer, 3, like now, to 10 p.m. Let's get right to meteorologist Mike Nico. Mike, this extended flex alert period is interesting because temperatures are actually not quite as hot as Monday and Tuesday, right?
Not quite as hot here, but they are definitely hotter than they were yesterday, and they're hotter in more neighborhoods, so that may cause us to use more electricity, at least here in the Bay Area. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's take a look in that rebound we talked about yesterday, almost double digits in some neighborhoods. Right now it's about 82 in San Francisco, comfortable 70 though along the coast in Half Moon Bay, but look at that, near 90 in San Mateo, near 100 in Hayward. We have 100s in the South Bay, the North Bay, and also our inland East Bay. Record-setting temperatures outside right now. The Weather Service, as we speak, is updating their afternoon package. So this could change between now and when we come back at 4 o'clock. But for now, the heat advisory for those areas in orange, the same areas, continues through 8 o'clock this evening. Same thing with the excessive heat warning. I'm still forecasting 100s in our inland East Bay neighborhood tomorrow, but that's usually not enough for the National Weather Service to keep a warning like this up. So tomorrow, it'll more likely be just Solano and Lake and Mendocino counties after 8 o'clock tonight when the rest of us drop out of it. So here's how our evening unfolds. We still have 97 at 7 o'clock inland, 86 around the Bay, but a comfortable 68 at the coast, and then mid-60s, mid-70s, mid-80s as we head towards 10 o'clock and that flex alert finally ending. Now, as far as moving forward, our last day of suffering record heat, that is today. Tonight will be our last night of record warm low temperatures. It'll be sharply cooler this weekend with less sunshine as mid-level tropical clouds come on in. That's going to make it a little bit more humid. There's a slight chance of a shower Saturday and some sprinkles possible Sunday morning, but that's about it. The cooling trend will be the bigger story this weekend. Tonight you can see a few asterisks out there. Those are some record warm low temperatures once again, most of us in the 50s and also into the 60s. So where do we end up tomorrow? Still well warmer than average, upper 80s for places like Milpitas and Sunnyvale, 90s to near 100 in the South Bay. For the peninsula, we're looking at low to upper 80s. Even cooler at the coast tomorrow, mid 60s to even a 71 in Daly City. How about some low to upper 70s across San Francisco and South San Francisco? Still a lot of 90s in the North Bay, even 100s north of Calistoga. Along the East Bay, we have some 70s for Richmond and Berkeley, 80s elsewhere. And here are the wealth of 100s and where our air will be dangerous once again, at least heat-wise. There's no spare the air tomorrow. All right, let's talk about the changes. We've been keeping an eye on Hurricane K. It is still going to go right up to our border with Mexico and then turn back down to the south. But it will be close enough that thunderstorms are possible all the way up to places like Fresno, South Lake Tahoe, and out towards Santa Barbara. Here's a look at the rain. And for SoCal, this rain could mean wind damage out of the same storms, even some mudslides and some flooding. For us, we're looking at pretty much nothing measurable, unfortunately, unless we get a rogue thunderstorm Saturday and some of those sprinkles Sunday morning. But look at the significant drop in the temperatures back into the 70s and 80s Saturday. A few 90s try to pop up Sunday, Monday, but they're the exception. It'll be even cooler next week, Kristen. Back more like autumn should be, but one more day of heat inland.
All right, hang in there, folks. Thanks, Mike. In the meantime, a reminder of what you can do right now to help conserve power during today's flex alert. If you have AC, set your thermostat to 78 degrees or higher if your health allows. Don't charge your electric car or use major appliances like your dishwasher, washer and dryer, or electric oven or stove. It's always a good idea to turn off lights you're not using, but during a flex alert, you really need to be on top of that and turn off any unnecessary lights. Every little bit helps. We'll have more on that at 4, but right now we want to get to today's other top story, and that is the death of Queen Elizabeth. Mourners have gathered at Buckingham Palace. We're looking at it live. It's nightfall there now, and flags have been lowered to half-staff. Her Majesty passed away just hours after the palace had announced that she was under medical supervision. Prince Charles, her son, is now king. He's currently at Balmoral Castle, where the Queen died, and he'll return to London tomorrow. ABC's Rena Roy has more.
Queen Elizabeth II, head of state reigning over the United Kingdom since 1952.
My lords, pray be seated.
Born Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor on April 21, 1926, Lilibet, as she was known to her close family, was never expected to be queen. All that changed in 1936 when her father unexpectedly became King George VI after his older brother's abdication, leaving the 10-year-old Princess Elizabeth next in line to the throne. She won public admiration by doing her part during World War II, training as a truck driver and a mechanic, and on her 21st birthday, Elizabeth taking on the mantle of public service.
That my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family.
She lifted a gloomy country's spirits when she married the dashing Navy officer Philip Mountbatten. And just a few years after the war, becoming a mother for the first time. Prince Charles, born in 1948, the first of their 4 children and first in line to the throne. After battling an illness, her father died when she was abroad in Kenya in 1952. The 25-year-old princess was now queen. Her coronation, the first to be televised from Westminster Abbey, was watched by millions around the world. She worked with 15 prime ministers, starting with Sir Winston Churchill, and met with 13 American presidents, including President Biden. But there were low moments among the highs.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
In 1992, Elizabeth faced a particularly troublesome year, which brought the collapse of 3 of her children's marriages and a devastating fire at her home in Windsor Castle. In 1997, the death of Princess Diana in a car crash in Paris, a public backlash after it took the Queen several days to publicly mourn and pay tribute to her former daughter-in-law. And in more recent times, her son Prince Andrew embroiled in a sex scandal rocking the monarchy to its foundation. And the royal family's turbulent relationship with Prince Harry's wife, Meghan Markle. But through it all, the Queen remaining the steady center of her growing family, and always supported by Prince Philip, her husband of 73 years until his death in April of 2021. Queen Elizabeth managed to reign in a modern world without compromising tradition. To Great Britain, she dies the longest reigning British sovereign in history, a symbol of steadfastness in an age of unprecedented change. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
ABC's coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth continues tonight. At 8, George Stephanopoulos will anchor a special report. Then at 9, Queen Elizabeth II, A Royal Life, a special edition of 2020. And stay with us for ABC7 News at 11. We'll have much more on Queen Elizabeth's reign and life on our ABC7 Bay Area streaming apps. We've got the latest developments and a special highlighting the Queen's visit to the Bay Area in the 1980s. You can download the app now for your Roku, Apple TV, and much more. Up next, we're going to turn our attention back to the heat wave still going on, and could it go down as the worst ever in California history? Or are some aspects of it rather typical, or will become typical? A climate expert joins us to explain what's driving this extreme heat and its impact on everything from wildfires to energy. Next on Getting Answers. As Mike mentioned earlier, this is an unprecedented 9th day of a flex alert when we're asked to conserve energy due to demand for it to stay comfortable during this extended heat wave. We want to dig into the cause of this heat wave as well as its impact on wildfires in our electrical grid. Joining us live now is Patrick Brown, co-director of Climate and Energy at the Breakthrough Institute in Berkeley. Patrick, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
We all very much want for this heat wave to be done, and hopefully this will be the last really bad day. So it's a good time to assess what we're experiencing here. How historic, how unusual, how epic was this, truly?
Yeah, so in climate science, we talk about basically three aspects of heat waves. We talk about their extent, how large they are, their duration, how long they last, and their intensity, like how hot it is. And the extent is more or less typical of what we see these types of West Coast heat waves. The duration is really the notable aspect of this heat wave, that in some locations you have substantially elevated temperatures for about 2 weeks, which is pretty unusual. And then, of course, the intensity as well is a major factor here. So a lot of locations saw their all-time record high temperatures fall during this heat wave. So, we saw 117s in some locations. And climate change is really driving the intensity aspect of it. So as it gets warmer, we expect basically all temperatures to get warmer. And so that means heat waves get warmer. And we calculate that the hottest temperatures in California during this time of year should be warming about 10 to 20% faster than the global average. So when we talk about the global average, we talk about the Paris Agreement of staying below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by the end of the century. You kind of can do some simple math to convert that and figure out that, okay, that means that say a 117 that we saw this week in California, that would have been about a 115 in a pre-industrial climate, and we would expect that to be closer to about a 121 in a plus 3C world at the end of the century. So that's about the range we're talking here in terms of climate change's impact on the intensity.
I see. The baseline is higher, so when you get the heat wave, it's that much higher. But let me ask you to go back and talk about something you said with regard to California and globally. Are you saying we are warming up faster than the rest of the world?
Yeah, so the land warms faster than the ocean. So just from that alone, where everyone lives on land, of course, is warming faster than the global average. And then if you just look at the hottest temperatures, how fast the hottest temperatures are warming, that's that 10 to 15% increase relative to the global average. So we do see that on that extreme side of the distribution, a little bit faster warming than the global average. All
right, can you talk about the impact on wildfires and our risk for wildfires? Of course, we have always had them in California and more in recent years, but the one mosquito fire, I think, near the Sacramento area, east of in the foothills, talk about how this heat wave may have contributed.
Yeah, so in fire science, we often use the shorthand hot, dry, windy as being the conditions that are favorable for wildfires. And this heat wave is hot and dry. So in California, when it's hot, especially this time of year, that basically means dry because the atmosphere can hold more moisture. And so these hot temperatures essentially can suck moisture out of the vegetation. So where the mosquito fire is right now, they have critically dry fuels. We have what's called 100-hour dead fuel moisture, which is a technical term, but it's a measure of the moisture in basically sticks, and that's below 10%, which is a critical threshold where fire danger becomes much larger. And so this heat wave definitely contributed to that. When you have exceptional heat for a number of days, that dries out the fuels and it makes ignitions more likely, and it makes it more likely for fires to spread in uncontrollable ways. And that doesn't go away once the heat goes away. The fuels will remain dry afterwards until you get a lot more moisture.
How about the impact in terms of the longer duration on our electrical grid, right? Because if you look at today, the 9th day of a flex alert, they're having to call for that flex alert from 3 to 10 now. That's a longer period than ever before, even though our temperatures aren't as hot as Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, I think the more days that you have where you're very close to these thresholds of supply of energy not being able to meet demand, the more days you have of that, the more likely something else can go wrong, like a power generation plant can go out, and then you're in big trouble. So the duration affects things that way. But that is another aspect of why this heat wave is historical, is we set an all-time demand record for the state on Tuesday. And so this is something that we have to adapt to as it gets warmer, because it's going to continue to get warmer no matter what happens on the reducing emissions side for at least 3 decades.
So when you say adapt, how?
Yeah, so we're working on that with the electric grid, for example, that in August 2020, when we had rolling blackouts, there was not nearly as much battery power on the grid. And so we've been adapting by putting battery power on the grid so that we could move some of that solar energy from the middle of the day towards that peak demand time around 5:30 p.m. So that's the type of thing, adapting the electric grid to the possibility of these much larger demand spikes as it gets warmer and as more people adopt air conditioning going forward.
And I wonder if we'll start to live differently too, right? I know, for example, if you go to Singapore or Malaysia, some of the hottest places in the world, people go out at night when it's finally a little bit cooler instead of the daytime, right? Are we going to see our behavior shift? Are we going to need to?
Yeah, I think so. So I've looked at this in the literature that looks at, for example, mortality rates associated with temperature, and those vary vastly across the world depending on what the local climate is. So in a location that's not used to warm temperatures, you are in much greater danger of getting sick or dying if it's warm. And if you're in a location that's basically used to it, the sensitivity of that is much less. And so people try to figure out exactly why that is. Is it just that there's more air conditioning? But it doesn't seem like it's just more air conditioning. It does seem like it's behavioral and learned experiences and people acclimating in other ways. And so I think that's going to be happening as well.
Well, I can't let you go, Patrick, without asking you the ultimate question we posed, which is, will this go down in history as the worst heat wave ever? Because some scientists think perhaps, others say, no way, the worst is yet to come.
Well, yeah, every single year the baseline is warming, and so we absolutely expect to break these records further going forward. And so, we hear a lot about on the mitigation side of climate change, of reducing emissions, and the big stories right now of California banning new sales of internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035. So that's part of the story of reducing emissions. But that's a slow process. It's a global process. And so that's not really going to have any impact on our temperature trajectory until at least the 2040s, 2050s, 2060s. And so it's going to continue to get warmer, and these records, I'm sure, will fall in that time.
We needed to have started seriously 50 years ago, but better late than never. Patrick, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on.
Coming up next, San Francisco rolls out a new initiative to map the heat. Why the city wants to know which neighborhoods are most vulnerable to extreme temperatures and what it plans to do with the data. Stay with us. Getting Answers. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Although San Francisco tends to be cooler than its inland counterparts, thanks to its location and often seen marine layer, but these days even the city by the bay is suffering through more heat waves. Now, city leaders are doing something about it by assessing which neighborhoods are heat islands, pockets most vulnerable to extreme temperatures. Joining us live now to tell us more about a new heat mapping project, City Administrator Carmen Chu. Carmen, great to see you.
Great to see you. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks. So tell us, what are these heat islands that you're trying to pinpoint?
Well, we started an initiative through a grant that was provided by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We were one of 14 cities to be granted this award. And what we did was that we sent out 30 volunteers across the city to map the data about how humid and how hot different parts of our city are. I think for people who live in the city, you know that we've got microclimates. Some neighborhoods are extremely hot, others are in the blanket of fog. And so being able to understand what the built environment looks like, what tree canopy, what pavements, what buildings do to the temperature and humidity of our different neighborhoods is really important to help us make smart investments in the future.
For sure. Look, this is not something, you ever thought the city would have to worry about. After all, we have that famous fog and everything, but that is a reality. So tell us a little bit more about how you went about this first round of mapping. I understand volunteers actually drove around, right, as the heat wave was just getting underway last weekend. Tell us what they did.
That's right. We had about 30 different volunteers who essentially took different routes at 3 different times of the day. They drove basically all across the city, and they had these sensors of humidity and heat attached to their vehicles. And so as they were driving, the air would flow right through, and we'd be capturing a ton of data basically about how hot it was, how humid it was in different parts of our neighborhood, to be able to really map out what our city feels like, especially during the heat wave. And we all know in this past week, we've had a pretty hot few days. And so being able to capture that was really great. In San Francisco, we don't tend to think things get too hot, but we've seen pretty extreme temperatures. We hit 106 degrees several years ago. So it's not unusual. And especially with climate change, we expect more and more of these heat events to occur. So being able to map this out so we can know where to put our heat center, our cooling centers, knowing where we can grow our trees and really invest in our infrastructure to help us be more resilient is going to be really important to saving lives in the future.
Yeah, so tell us what they discovered. What does the data tell you preliminarily? Were there neighborhoods where the temperatures were just that much hotter, and could you tell why? Walk us through what you found.
Yeah, we're collecting the data now. So all of the cars are all the data is being collected, and it's going to be analyzed, and we'll be able to share the report as quick as we can with everybody here. But what we do know is that we don't feel heat in an even way across the city. There are parts of our city that have much more tree canopy or green space. Other parts of our city have a lot of concrete, maybe a lot of buildings that create heat pockets. And I think we all know the terrain of San Francisco. We've got a hilly city. And so sometimes heat and air and other parts of our natural environment gets trapped in such a way that creates hotter pockets in our city than in other places. And so especially when we're talking about people who are more vulnerable to heat sensitivities, or seniors, or the folks who may have more sensitive health conditions like asthma and other things, we want to really be able to understand, how do we map out what people experience on the ground to where our vulnerable communities are located, and really as a city think smarter about where we put our resources to helping during heat events.
You mentioned the elderly. Are you going to take the heat data and kind of marry it with the people data to find out what the best solutions are to help the people in those neighborhoods where you have the heat islands?
Absolutely. This initiative isn't something that's just part of our resiliency effort. It was also a collaboration between different departments in our city, our public health department, our emergency management department, our Department of the Environment, as well as community partners. And so we really want to be able to marry the data about heat and humidity with the people data, making sure we understand, again, where do we have vulnerable communities? Where do we have natural public resources to be able to serve as cooling centers, and then being able to make smart choices about how we make investments for the future.
Interesting. Yeah, because the solution may be different from neighborhood to neighborhood. If you have a lot of kids, you may want more swimming pools, and maybe it's schools with more canopies or trees. Anyway, thank you so much. Do keep us posted, Carmen Chu. Really appreciate it.
Sounds great. Thank you.
From hot temperatures, folks, to a hot deal right now. We're going to make this shift because we want to let you know there's a special offer today to celebrate Disney Plus Day. You can stream for 1 month for just $1.99. That's for new and returning subscribers. Find out all about it at disneyplus.com. Disney is the parent company of ABC7. Be right back. Thanks so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers today. If you're streaming us, stay right here because we're going to stream next from the ABC7 Archive special about Queen Elizabeth's last visit to the Bay Area in 1983. Check it out coming up right now on our 24/7 stream. And if you're watching us on TV, World News Tonight with David Muir is coming up next. And I'll see you back here at 4.